couple people want to ask questions. We're going to start with Councilmember Lancman.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Let's start where we can find some common agreement, and that is that the words that are used matter. And racist, bigoted, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic words can have very serious consequences. In fact, just last week, I was at the funeral of a Muslim woman who was murdered in my district, my constituent, Nazma Khanam, who, although it hasn't been declared a hate crime, we are deeply suspicious that it was. And it would be foolish of us if we were to ignore the atmosphere of xenophobia and Islamophobia that is being propagated, particularly at the presidential campaign level. So part of what the council does, as you all know, you've probably all testified before the council many, many times, is sometimes we pass bills, sometimes we pass resolutions that express the sentiment of the council. And very often, and particularly this council, being a proudly progressive council, we take stands against racism and sexism and homophobia and Islamophobia, et cetera. But the irony of somebody testifying against an anti-BDS resolution with the slogan, "I don't agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it," is just mind-boggling to me, because at the heart of the BDS movement, particularly as it relates to cultural, social, academic boycotts, is the suppression of viewpoints and speech, particularly on college campuses, but not exclusively. People who have pro-Israel viewpoints being shouted down and being prevented from speaking, or Jewish students who are leafleting or tabling, being prevented from speaking or articulating their views. That too is the BDS movement. And I also hear the phrase a lot from this panel that the BDS movement is nonviolent, as if nonviolence is enough to exclude any speech movement that is discriminatory. Now, in New York State, we have laws against discriminatory conduct that is not violent. You cannot deny someone employment based on their race or national origin. You cannot deny someone public accommodations. You cannot deny someone housing, et cetera, and including in New York State, you cannot initiate a boycott or conduct a boycott against someone because of their national origin, among other categories. So the fact that that conduct does not rise to the level of violence does not mean that it is not both abhorrent and illegal. So our views on the Israel-Palestinian issue are diametrically opposed. And some of us have shared those views on Twitter and other forums.
Yes, we have.
So I'm not going to do that today. But as a legal matter, and I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have your written testimony, so I don't.
Radhika.
You're from Legal Palestine?
Palestine Legal.
Palestine Legal, I'm sorry. The reference was made by you and I think another panelist to the Claiborne case, which was a Supreme Court case decided in 1982, which upheld, or rather prevented, a tort claim against the NAACP for conducting a boycott. But I would like you to recognize on the record, or correct me if I'm wrong, but 10 years after that case, the Second Circuit had the opportunity to examine New York State's anti-boycott law in a case, Jews for Jesus versus JCRC, ironically. And it upheld New York State's anti-boycott law because, like conduct or speech that results in conduct that discriminates based on race, religion, national origin, and employment, housing, you name it, that also includes boycotts and interfering with economic activity because of someone's national origin. And that is what, speaking for myself, that is what the BDS movement is. It identifies people of a national origin, Israel. In point of fact, and I would be surprised if this panel of very capable, intelligent, experienced people would deny it, it has often, very often, expressed itself beyond Israelis and just Jews generally. But can you please recognize or correct me if I'm wrong, that in New York State, we have a law that prohibits boycotting based on national origin, and that law has been upheld by the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, one level below the Supreme Court, after the Supreme Court's decision in Claiborne.
I'd be happy to correct you. So BDS is a tactic. It does not target individuals based on their national origin. It targets organizations based on, or companies based on their conduct. So for example, you heard testimony today from Tahir. You have BDS campaigns on college campuses urging their universities to divest from companies such as, for example, Caterpillar Bulldozer, which is an American company, which is used by the Israeli army to bulldoze Palestinian homes. So that would be an example of a divestment tactic. It does not target individuals because of their national origin.
But,
Again,
but it would also be, but it's also a divestment tactic to not invite or block a speaker from an Israeli university not located anywhere in what you would call the West Bank from speaking. So it covers lots and lots of things. And I don't want to listen.
I don't want to waste everyone's time here, but
Yeah.
I would just say one thing. So, you're stating a lot of making a lot of statements that aren't based on any actual facts, and I really do recommend. I mean, I know the resolution doesn't actually have any footnotes, so I'm not sure where these statements are even coming from. I do suggest that you go to the Boycott National Committee's website.
Are Israeli academics from universities and colleges outside of the West Bank not subject to boycott? Are
It's
Israeli
institutions. It's people with Israeli officials can be subjected to academic boycotts as well. So it's not about individuals and their individual capacities. It's about institutions. It's about companies. Again, this is we're talking about people who are taking a principled stance for human rights here. When Governor Cuomo instituted a boycott of North Carolina for its anti-LGBTQ laws, no one said that, hey, why are you singling out North Carolina for discrimination? There's a whole bunch of other countries a whole lot more discriminatory. No one said that this targeted North Carolinians. So the question here really is, why is this council singling out people who support Palestinian human rights for condemnation? I'll just say, I'm Indian American. My parents are from India. There were some quotes from Gandhi going on here. I've been an activist on many different issues before I became an attorney at Palestine Legal. When I've spoken out for Indian human rights, no one asked me why I'm, singling out India for condemnation. Why don't I talk about sub-Saharan African countries that have it so much worse than India? So really, I want you all to think very carefully here about why we're spending so much time trying to condemn New Yorkers of every stripe, every religion, every background, who are really care very passionately about this issue.
To answer the question that you put to me, and I know you didn't answer my question, which was a focused legal question, but to answer the question that you put to me, despite what the last panelist said, it's true that the BDS movement is not winning in any way, shape, or form. There are almost no actual successes in terms of having an economic impact on or impact on the state of Israel. We are here today because your movement is creating a climate of and an actuality of fear, anti-Semitism, and the suppression of the rights of those who are pro-Israel, and in many cases, they don't even have to be pro-Israel, they just have to be Jewish, to be able to go about their lives. That's really why we're here, to answer your question of me.